Do you hear it? That faint, almost imperceptible sound that echoes through the house when you think you're alone. It's always there, waiting. During the day, you can ignore it, drown it out with the noise of the outside world. But at night, you can't escape. It was 3 months ago, maybe 4, when the first sign came. I was in my study, as usual, going over some documents. My nights had always been quiet, lonely, wrapped in the warm glow of an old lamp I inherited from my grandfather. He used to hear things too, or so he said before he died. That night, something changed. At first, it was a subtle creak, like someone walking barefoot down the hallway. I thought it was my imagination. After all, old wooden floors sometimes protest in the cold. But this sound was different, rhythmic, slow, like something or someone was taking each step with perverse caution. "Who's there?" I yelled. Of course, I didn't expect an answer, but the silence that followed made me more uneasy. The hallway was dark, as always, because my lamp barely illuminated the entrance to the study. But for some reason, that night, the void that covered the house seemed denser. I forced myself to stand up, my legs trembling, and move toward the door. The sound stopped the moment I touched the handle, as if that thing, whatever it was, knew I had noticed its presence. I sighed and laughed at myself. Don't be stupid, I thought. It's just the noise of an old house. But then it started again, this time closer, heavier. Every muscle in my body tensed. My skin prickled. I couldn't move, not even to take a deep breath. The pressure in the air was suffocating, like someone was standing right behind me, watching me in silence with a twisted smile I couldn't see, but could feel. I slammed the study door shut and leaned against it, trying to hear something else, anything that would give me a clue about what was happening. But there was only silence. That absolute and stifling. Silence that seems to wrap everything when danger lurks, as if the entire world were holding its breath, waiting. I decided not to leave, at least not that night. I stayed in the study, surrounded by the walls that had once brought me comfort, but now seemed to be slowly closing in on me like a coffin. The clock on the wall ticked slowly. That ticking sound I usually ignored now felt like dull thuds inside my skull. Hours passed, and as dawn approached, my mind tried to rationalize what had happened. Maybe it was a mouse or the ancient foundations of the house shifting. It was nothing, and then I heard it again. It wasn't a creak this time. It was a whisper, low, barely perceptible, like someone was talking on the other side of the door. But I couldn't understand the words. They were just fragments, sounds that slid under the wood like snakes. "Go away," I whispered, almost begging. But whatever was out there didn't leave. Instead, the door handle groaned. Yes, I heard it clearly, a metallic whine, like someone was turning it very slowly. I jumped up, backing away toward the desk. I felt cold sweat on the back of my neck, my hands trembling, my heart pounding so fast I thought I might faint. The door cracked open. Just a few inches, enough for the dim, flickering light from the hallway to seep inside. I didn't see anything, but I felt something. It was like a dark presence, dense, filling the room, stealing my breath. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry. The only thing I could do was rush to the window and fling it open, letting the cool dawn air flood the room. The feeling of suffocation lessened, but the fear remained, lodged deep in my bones. That was the first night. The following weeks were hell. At first, I tried to pretend nothing was happening. I told myself it was just the sounds of the house, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But the whispers. Oh, the whispers. They didn't stop. They became clearer, more insistent. It didn't matter where I was in the house, I always heard them. At first, they were incomprehensible words, but slowly, they began to take shape. Let me in. Let me in. Let me in. I nearly lost my mind. The nights became endless vigils, waiting for something else to happen. I convinced myself there was an entity in the house, something ancient, something malevolent. But I had no proof, only my growing paranoia and the noises that, for some reason, no one else could hear. One night, as I tried to fall asleep, I felt something cold touch my shoulder. I jumped out of bed and turned around, but there was no one there. However, the air was freezing, much colder than it should have been on a summer night. And then I saw it, a blurry figure, barely visible, standing at the foot of my bed. Its eyes, if it had any, stared at me with an intensity that pierced my soul. And its mouth, that disfigured and enormous mouth, slowly opened into an unnatural grin. That was the last time I tried to sleep in that room. Since that night, I moved to the couch in the living room. I couldn't bear the thought of being in that room again, in that bed, with that thing watching me from the darkness. However, it wasn't enough to keep it away. Every corner of the house seemed contaminated with its presence. Do you hear it? It's here. The couch, which had once been a comfortable refuge, now felt like a trap. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt as if someone were leaning over me, whispering in my ear, brushing my skin with a cold, putrid breath. Sometimes I woke up with a start, convinced there was someone standing behind me, but there was never anything. Only shadows, those same shadows that crawled along the walls and seemed to come to life at night. One night, as I tried not to think about what was lurking, the sound of footsteps began again. This time louder, more insistent. They were coming from upstairs, right where my bedroom was. But something was off. The rhythm was erratic, like whoever was walking was dragging their feet, as if they were injured or broken. The sound slowly descended the stairs, and I, paralyzed by fear, couldn't move. I knew that if I looked down the hall, I would see it. I would finally see it. My heart was beating so hard my chest hurt, and the air became dense, heavy. And then, suddenly, it stopped. The silence that followed was even more terrifying. The footsteps had stopped at the bottom of the stairs, just a few meters from where I lay on the couch. I didn't dare breathe. My gaze was fixed on the ceiling, but I could feel something watching me, something that patiently waited for me to make the mistake of looking. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, I don't know, but that thing didn't move. It stayed there, motionless, lurking, waiting. Finally, when I thought I might lose my mind, the clock in the living room struck midnight. The first chime echoed throughout the house, and at that precise moment, I heard a voice. It wasn't a whisper this time. It was a clear, deep voice filled with an unfathomable malice. "You're in my house." My body froze. It was as if an invisible hand had grabbed me by the throat, preventing me from moving a single muscle. That voice. God, that voice. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. There was something so deeply dark in its tone, something that didn't belong to this world. I tried to scream, but my throat was closed, as if the fear itself had stolen my ability to make a sound. And then, suddenly, the lights in the house flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed everything. I could feel it. I felt it coming closer. I jumped up, stumbling in the darkness as an unbearable cold enveloped me like a damp shroud. I ran toward the kitchen, trying to find somewhere to barricade myself. My trembling hands barely managed to grasp the door handle, and when I finally opened it, I locked myself inside, turning on all the lights. I slid down to the floor, huddled in a corner, breathing heavily. From the kitchen, I could hear the noises in the house, creaks, whispers, footsteps. It moved through the living room, searching for me. Every second was torture, and I knew that at any moment it could find me. My only hope was that the light in the kitchen would keep it away. Several hours passed before I dared to move. When the first ray of sunlight filtered through the windows, I finally felt safe enough to come out. I walked through the house, my skin crawling, each step filled with dread. However, everything was in place. No furniture moved, no signs of a struggle. It was as if what had happened that night existed only in my mind. But I knew that wasn't the case. I knew that thing was still there. That was the last night I spent in that house. I never slept there again, not even for a single hour. The following weeks, I stayed in cheap motels, each one farther from the place, hoping that the distance would allow me to escape the curse I had awakened. But it didn't work. Wherever I went, wherever I hid, sometimes the darkest secrets remain buried until we choose to unearth them. The shadows that roam the streets remind us that, even in broad daylight, evil always lurks, waiting for its moment. But it's not just what we can see that terrifies us, it's what we don't yet know, what we have yet to discover. Here at Grim Secrets, we delve into the forbidden, unearthing what others fear to remember. And if you too want to walk with us through the shadows, unravel the most disturbing mysteries, and uncover the secrets that few dare to tell, join us. Subscribe now to Grim Secrets and never miss another episode. Explore the macabre, the dark, the unknown, only if you dare. The next secret could be yours.